Hello, friends. Looks like it's Friday once again. Time for another edition of Rebel News. This is Rebel News for January 19th, 2024.
Why are you gay?
So, our first story here takes us all the way to North Korea, where it looks like a statue commemorating sort of the hope that North and South Korea may one day be reunified was taken down. So Kim Jong-un ordered that the monument get destroyed. Looks like it was destroyed this past Tuesday. Satellites confirmed that it was missing. And the monument of reunification is no more. Kim Jong-un has also recently announced that hopes for reunification are impossible and that South Korea has now become their primary foe. Obviously, folks are monitoring the situation closely. North Korea is known to kind of aggressively posture like this all the time, but sure seems like recently things have soured. Another kind of interesting international story we got here. It seems like Hindu nationalism has started to sort of rise. Prime Minister Modi this past week commemorated a new Hindu temple to the god Ram. It was opened up to the public officially, causing a great excitement among Hindu believers in the area. Sort of controversial story with the temple, however. It was built on the site of what was once known as the Babri Mosque, which had existed since the 16th century. This caused a bit of outrage among the Muslim Indian population, and there seems to definitely be some controversy about the whole site for going out back many hundreds of years. Seems like this kind of finally puts the nail in the coffin on the controversy, albeit in a kind of unfortunate way. But it's interesting to see India make more and more headlines with interesting kind of stories like this. I'm sure this won't bode well for relations with Pakistan, which are already pretty tense. We'll just have to keep an eye out and see how that turns out. And for our next story, we've been monitoring the situation in Syria between them and Turkiye pretty closely, as well as the different vying factions in the area. But it seems that this past week, Turkiye has decided to annex nearly 15 kilometers inside of Syrian territory in the Kurdistan region known as Rojava. And specifically in the village of Sarıkaniye, looks like the Turkish occupation forces just showed up and kind of assumed control of the city, much to the anger of the folks in the area. But it seems like they have no plans to leave anytime soon. I find it kind of curious that this comes in light of Turkiye accepting Sweden into NATO. So perhaps some quid pro quo or deal was worked out where if Turkiye and Erdogan accepted Sweden, perhaps we looked away on certain other issues that we normally would maybe say something about. So we'll continue keeping a close eye on the situation in Syria, but definitely looks like things are continuing to get worse with Turkiye. Alright, and we've covered the Xinjiang Azadi uprisings in Iran before, but it looks like that situation has continued to develop. So during this past week, a participant in the uprising, Mohammed Kabadlo, was executed before actually being issued any kind of death sentence, prompting 61 women in Iranian custody to begin a hunger strike. It looks like the movement which has many ties to the philosophical and ideological struggles in Rojava, seems to have really taken a hold there in Iran. It doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, despite severe attempts by the government to suppress and even kill participants. Another situation we've been monitoring is that in Iraq with the coalition forces there. And it seems this past week that once again, the United States seems to have killed a couple members of the Popular Mobilization forces there, which caused, of course, as one might imagine, some more upset folks in Iraq. And calls for the coalition to leave the entire area. So in a kind of positive development to that, however, despite all these, the killings, at least the United States has announced that it is officially coming to the table with the Iraqi government to discuss a plan for the coalition to leave. So that's certainly a positive development. However, I did find other reports that the United States has plainly stated they do not intend to leave Syria and more than likely other bases in neighboring countries. So while the coalition may depart Iraq proper, they almost certainly would still have regional access to Iraq and ability to carry out whatever operations they may seem necessary. And in some more potentially good news, the retired Lebanese Brigadier General Khalil al-Hilo spoke with Hawar news agency this week and had some interesting insights on the conflicts between Israel and Hezbollah. As many know, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel from the Lebanese border. However, according to the retired officer, he feels like the odds of this escalating and spilling over are very low, and that all interests involved probably do not want an escalation, particularly Hezbollah, who would be most vulnerable and susceptible to weakening themselves and would put them in far too much jeopardy that Iran would not find acceptable. So I found this a pretty interesting insight from an actual officer of the area, and while it may be a bit idyllic for some, I think it tells a lot about the state of the political situation there and the use of Hezbollah as more of a political messaging system rather than a direct military arm of invading and conquering anything. And for our last story here, 166 YPJ martyrs were commemorated in the Syrian village of Kamishli. The martyrs had all taken place over the months of December and January, and were all honored in a pretty large ceremony. The village of Kamishli has been known to be kind of a central spot for these sorts of ceremonies and has often held many such commemorations for YPJ fighters in the area. It's pretty interesting to follow, and one thing about the YPJ I think they find interesting that they make sure to commemorate each individual with stories and biographies and images. It's rather interesting the lengths that they'll go to honor every individual that served. And with that, thank you for joining me, friends. Hope to see you next week, and yeah, love you.